Once in an ancient place there was a great warrior. He had many great feats and trials throughout his life, those that made him stronger and tougher than any mortal man. He had soaked in the blood of monsters, men, demons, and gods alike, making his skin invulnerable to arms, fire, ice, and even time itself. He grew centuries old, guarding both his glory and his village from any perceived threat. By this point, he no longer bothered with his sword, armor, training, or even any attempts at tactics. With his invulnerability and strength on his side, he would eventually wear out any challenger. At least, that was what was thought, until a challenger came into town. The challenger came from a distant place, an empire that saw itself as the inheritors of the world. They had sent 2 armies against the warrior, and all of them fell. For the final attack on the village, the empire only sent 1 challenger. A mysterious figure, muscled like a dancer, armed with their knives and singular axe. Over their face, a mirrored mask that concealed both gender and identity. The challenger, speaking for the empire, told the warrior and the village that if they could kill the challenger, the empire would leave the village alone, and if the warrior fell, then the empire would conquer the village. The warrior agreed. Having never lost a fight in his long life, he considered himself unbeatable, even now against this mysterious challenger. The fight began at dawn. The warrior, clothed in his work pants and his tunic, eager to prove his invulnerability and strength against the challenger, his skin unmarked with even the smallest blemish, no scars, wrinkles, even the dirt refused to cling to his perfect skin. The challenger instead stood with their mask on, and the armor of the distant sea people, armed with their knives and axe. But all of those that watched expected the fight to start with the challenger striking the warrior. Instead, the challenger stood still, the sun behind them as they waited for the warrior to strike. Sure enough, the warrior led with a powerful and obvious punch, only for the challenger to easily sidestep the attack, launching their own series of punches against the warrior's arms. The blows too quick for the warrior to count as he reached for the challenger, who, with ease, ducked beneath the grasp, launching more punches against the warrior's stomach. The warrior stepped forward, only to have his legs swept by the challenger, knocking the warrior down to the ground. The warrior laid on the ground for a few seconds, catching his breath. He didn't feel any pain from the blows, but it was strange for anyone to try so hard to hurt him, let alone to have anyone succeed in causing him to fall. The warrior stood back onto his feet as he smiled at the challenger. "Be proud, challenger. Few have ever caused me to fall," he told the challenger, who responded in kind. "You should be prouder, warrior. None have gotten up before when I caused them to fall," the challenger said just before they lifted up their axe and brought it down onto the warrior's head. A thin axe, barely big enough to cut through firewood. The blade was rusted, dull, and the handle was weak and covered in splinters. An axe that would have been discarded or replaced a long time ago. It was this axe blade that was brought down with the finality of a sunset. The warrior lifted with both hands to catch the axe as it came crashing down, and even though he caught the axe in his hands, he could feel weight and power behind the swing. As he held it in both of his hands, it reminded the warrior of trying to hold back the teeth of a dragon, only far heavier and far sharper. The warrior pushed back against the axe with both hands, a single leg falling as he pushed against the earth and against the challenger, finally forcing the challenger back along with his axe. "What a great axe, challenger! Surely it must be a legendary axe with a legendary name." the warrior said, while the challenger inspected the axe they carried with ease. This? A common and cheap item, something I am sure is in every home, though many choose to avoid it, forcing the blade to dull and the handle to wither. But still, it cuts sharper than steel, the challenger said as they offered the handle to the warrior. You're welcome to try and use it against me, they said as the warrior reached for the handle, only to withdraw his hand as soon as he grabbed the handle. The splinters on the handle were too sharp. They pierced his skin. That cannot be a common axe, the warrior said, examining his hand to see the splinters in his skin. I never said it was an axe, the challenger said as they dropped the axe to get close to the warrior, stabbing him with their knives. The blades unable to pierce the skin, but the warrior could feel the blows like heavy punches, far heavier than what the challenger was able to do with just their fists. The warrior tried to swing and strike the challenger, only to find that even though his heart was pounding, he was growing slower. His breaths were growing quick, and soon he fell to his knees again. Exhausted, he stared up at the challenger, who idly played with their knives, staring down at the warrior, who was struggling to stay upright and still breathe. If you were smart, you'd let yourself fall. None who had been struck by my knives have the strength to stand, even if the blade never pierces your skin, the challenger said, as the warrior realized he did have bruises blossoming on his skin. But he still refused to stop, standing once again facing the challenger, his breath heavy, his stance swaying, his palms sweating, his heart pounding, too weak to speak, but the warrior still stood, and he was still fighting against the challenger. All fall to me eventually. Why don't you just quit and fall now? The challenger asked, clouds gathering above them both, the first rain drops dropping over them both. The warrior, in his exhaustion, spat blood from where it bled into the inside of his body, since even with invulnerable skin, his organs and muscles were still harmed by the strength of the challenger's attacks. With the blood cleared from his mouth, the warrior responded, Fuck you, make me, the warrior said as the rain fell, and the two of them kept fighting. Every time the warrior tried to punch once, the challenger was able to strike 100 times. Every attempt to catch or strike the challenger was only met with empty air, rain, and mud. Every strike from the challenger, however, was always blocked by the warrior's unbreakable skin and unyielding strength. For hours they fought in the rain, the warrior soaked in mud, every breath a battle, every heartbeat painful, every movement agony. Even his thoughts slowed, all while the challenger remained as clean, as quick, and as uncatchable as ever. Until finally the warrior, too exhausted to continue, found himself fallen on his back. Too tired to move, his heart ached, his thoughts clouded, his breaths came feebly, as the challenger stood over the warrior. Even opening his eyes felt like an impossibility. Every part of his body felt frozen and drained, his nerve frayed a straw, his will burned away like a candle. The challenger looked down at the warrior as they clapped their hands, while the rainstorm above them continued. You should be proud, great warrior. You were never going to win, but you fought far greater than any mortal has ever fought before, and likely better than any you will ever fight again in the future. And because I have had few challengers as great as you. The challenger removed their mirrored mask to face the warrior, who now understood what it was he fought. I moved at the speed of your thoughts. The more your mind raced, the quicker I moved. The more you panicked and plotted, the easier for me to escape. Still, though, you missed me by mere centimeters more than once. It is a rare man who can move quicker than his thoughts. I tripped you with pride, something that has caused many great heroes, villains, men, and monsters to fail, even when they should have succeeded. Still, you recovered with ease and kept fighting, never falling for pride again, even though it was always with you the entire fight, acting as your rope, not your fall. I struck you with the precision of death, which catches everything and always hits the target. Yet you were still able to block me more than once. Few men ever block death even once. You blocked it hundreds of times. My axe was sharp because the blade was truth, cut sharper than any stone or metal blade. It was heavy because it was held to the handle by resolve, a resolve as heavy as your own, and you still lifted it as it held you to the ground. The handle was made from pain, which pierces all flesh, no matter how tough the flesh. Yet you only dropped the axe, and not yourself. My dual knives, insomnia and exhaustion, pierce the strongest and toughest, rendering the wise into fools, the mighty into the meek, the fortunate into unfortunate, crumbling the mightiest of towers and the strongest of empires, reducing predators into prey, and causing even the most resilient to become brittle. You fell, but picked yourself up, still deciding to fight even when your bones ached, your lungs burned, and your heart bled. The rainstorm wasn't any normal storm. The rain was despair. Even as despair drowned everyone else in the village, washing away every home while leaving the houses behind, even as it soaked into all of your body, weakening your steps, slowing your movements, coloring your actions, you fought against it, and me. For a full day and night, you fought through despair and fought me on top of your other injuries before it finally made you fall, the challenger explained, while the warrior weakly chuckled before responding with a tired voice. You're right. I fought all of that, and you remained untouched. But I think you are forgetting one thing, Challenger. And what is that? Even all of that couldn't kill me, the warrior said while the Challenger chuckled. Oh, I thought it was obvious what would kill you, the Challenger said as they took their hand and covered the warrior's nose and mouth. The warrior struggled against their grip, but the Challenger's grip was too much. As precise as death, as strong as resolve, and as quick as thought. You were always going to be killed by a challenge.